So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm saying that this is the first time I'm going to be doing a podcast. It's almost like a trial run, really, because I'm going to be thinking of putting a few of these up on my channel in the foreseeable future. My name's Sven, as you would have gathered from the name of my channel, and I'm going to be talking this evening to somebody who I've got to know in the last sort of few weeks very closely and on a very personal level, and that includes on a very spiritual level as well. And that's a topic that I want to sort of touch on this evening, in light of what's going on at the moment, with all the nonsense that surrounds us, no matter what side of the fence you're on, by the way. This is not a pro this or pro that or anti this or anti that podcast. This is just having a conversation on a spiritual level in terms of, what's best for us, how to go about things, and that sort of thing, because it's very easy to get caught up in ego. It's very easy to get caught up in getting involved in confrontation and all that sort of thing, where there actually might well be no need for it at all. So just before I recorded this, actually, I had a conversation already with Melissa, who has joined me to talk about this. So just a brief introduction. Melissa, how are you doing this evening? Nice to have you here. How are you feeling?
I'm good, thank you, Sven, and thank you for having me. Are you okay?
I'm absolutely fine, thank you. All the better for hearing you. Yes, absolutely, I'm fine. Yeah, so we were, just before I pressed record, talking about an incident that happened last week when I was on a bus going from Bournemouth, or Boscombe actually, where I live, to Poole to visit you. And there was an incident that happened there whereby it led to me eventually getting escorted off the bus for not wearing a face mask. Now, this isn't a topic, or this isn't a conversation we're having here about face masks, yes, no, blah, blah, blah. Really, what we're talking about here is how to go about dealing with those sorts of situations in future, and how it may be actually more prudent to maybe back out a little bit, or maybe sort of swallow one's pride, eat humble pie, whatever you want to call it. And you have been giving me a little bit of advice around this topic now for a while, about, how which sort of path you want to take in the bigger picture, because at the end of the day, if you want to feel good and if you want to sort of progress in life, then maybe you need to pick your battles more carefully, really. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the thing. I mean, at the moment, people are getting so caught up in what's right and wrong. They're completely overridden with fear. People are terrified to go anywhere without a face mask. They don't know what to do. They're running around like headless chickens in complete panic. And, like I was saying to you earlier, for instance, when you get on a bus, if somebody, approaches you and says, "Where's your face mask?" or "Why haven't you got a mask?" Yes, we know that, it's a discrimination matter for people to be asking those kinds of things. However, if you just give them your exemption card and say, "Yes, I'm exempt," then your soul is going to feel at peace. You're not going to get yourself worked up. Your ego might want to have a go at them back and say, "What's it got to do with you? You have no right to ask me." But really, that's your ego, getting involved, causing you drama, which is unnecessary. In a natural fact, to try and be peaceful around the matter, all you would have to do is just show your exemption card, and then you don't have any of the drama, any of the hassle. It doesn't make you stressed. You keep your soul at peace, at ease. You shouldn't ever let anybody disturb your inner peace.
Right. Excuse me. So now, for me, and like we were talking about earlier a few minutes ago before we recorded this, I have still an issue with getting that balance right between let's just say, standing up for your own rights, not that we have many left, by the way, which is a fair comment to make, because my experiences in the past few months have demonstrated that very clearly. And of course, that doesn't help, because that fuels that frustration even more, seeing it dwindling around you, and also through that dwindling, I'll put it another way. The fact that that's dwindling, that there are a few, that's multifaceted why that's happening. And a lot of it is to do with, I'll say it very cautiously, but the dumbness, the dumbing down of those around us who seem to just go with it and accept it as a normal, and think that certain behaviors are okay and acceptable, be it by basing their information on what they read in a newspaper, what they hear the local inspector talking about, what they hear the chief of police, or whatever he was, the chief of the police council or the chief's council, talking about in Downing Street, like he did a few days ago. The suggestions made about, how dangerous it is for people to not wear a face mask, for example, because you are then earmarked or highlighted as the problem for everyone else. And you've got all this sort of stuff going on in the background. And then, of course, when you're involved in a situation like I was, when I get on a bus in Boscombe, and it already starts with a conversation with the bus driver, who, by the way, is not wearing a mask, and the conversation kind of goes, do you have a face mask? Well, right there, I struggle to not get cynical and sarcastic. And I think maybe you'd want to say something about that, because perhaps that's where my first problem lies already, right there in that conversation, before we've even actually had a full-blown conversation,
Yeah, I mean, that's a really very difficult situation. And it's like we were saying before, so many people are in this, it's fear. It's literally so many people are in fear. Some people literally think there's some killer virus that if you breathe on somebody, you're going to drop to the floor and die. People are in that much fear because, the mainstream media are pumping people so much full of fear that people genuinely believe it. They are scared. And so that obviously if they see a smiling face, God forbid, they're terrified that, where's your mask? Put your mask on. And we, you and I know that there are exemptions, in accordance with the government website, there are certain exemptions. You don't have to wear a mask if you're exempt. And there are a list of reasons why you could be exempt. And it is discrimination to ask somebody what their reasons are, and you're not allowed to by law. They could have a £9,000 fine. That's not allowed. However, all we can do in that situation, and I'm not saying, don't stick up for your rights, because we have to, and we have to know what our rights are. However, if somebody is literally saying to you, where is your mask? You can simply say, I'm exempt. And if that's not good enough for them, and they want to say, where's your proof? Where's your exemption card? Literally show them an exemption card. You can print it offline. You can get a lanyard from Amazon even. Not that you want to be funding Amazon, but you can print it off of the internet, off of the government website or anywhere. You could type one up, I'm exempt. It's that easy. And I think it's so very easy to go along the lines of, fighting back at them. But in the grand scheme of things, what is one person? I mean, one person can make a lot of difference. We know that, that's fine. But your inner peace is being disturbed by trying to battle the argument. All it's going to do is cause a lot of drama, a lot of unnecessary upheaval for yourself, for everybody else around in that matter, when really you could just say, I'm exempt, here's my card, and carry on with your day in peace, unaffected.
Yeah, and with the benefit of hindsight and retrospectively, of course, what you're saying there is absolutely right, and there's no arguing that. In that moment, of course, it's a slightly different issue, and that is, of course, where clearly, and I can only speak for myself here, I'm not speaking for other people, clearly I have a lot of work to do, because clearly it triggers me in a way, because I, like I said before we recorded, I have a friend who I spoke with only yesterday, and he was saying the same, that it irks him as much as it irks me as well, to even have to explain that I'm exempt, because the fact of the matter is, because of the fact that you can print it off yourself or order it from whoever you want to order it from, shows you that you're exempting yourself in the first place, which means you don't even need to explain that you're exempt, if that makes sense. Because
you're completely right. Exactly.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and I think this is the thing, right? But just to finish off that ridiculous point, so knowing that GPs, general practitioners, doctors, for those who don't know what GPs are, who maybe live outside the UK, they have told me on the phone that they do not issue medically exempt certificates or notes or anything of the sort for you to then get that piece of paper in your pocket. And on asking my doctor why that was, he categorically said to me that because it's not legally binding. In other words, that is why it's left to everybody to just print out a piece of paper, cover it in a bit of see-through plastic, put some sort of material around it and put it around your neck, and there's your exemption card. Now, if that's the case, why aren't people understanding that the whole idea of having to show an exemption in the first place is nonsense? And that is the bit that I still struggle to get my head around, that people don't understand that. And I don't mean those of us like who see it from my side of the fence, but the vast majority who are complying so much that it's enabling this rollout to gather pace in the way it is, and not just the rollout, but bringing with it, kicking up all the dirt that goes with it, the conflict, the potential conflict that we have now, the division that's clear to see on a daily basis. The looks that you're getting now when you go into supermarkets. The recent things that I've heard of people being questioned for having a Chinese takeaway, whatever it was, a takeaway meal in their car, right? Or somebody getting arrested outside a supermarket for not wearing a face mask on entering it and standing his ground. Now, and this is the point where we have to then say to ourselves, okay, how far do we go to stand our ground before it gets messy, basically? And is it worth it? And this is the point. Not is it worth backing down, but is it worth fighting it in a different way or coming at it from a different angle? And that's why your input is so vital, Melissa,
Yeah, see, this is the exact thing. I mean, I think that most people now are starting to realise something's not quite right. They don't maybe know quite what's going on, but they're getting the sense that something isn't quite right. We've got lots of people trying to fight the system, because a lot of the rules or regulations or some of the laws or guidelines are quite, they're rubbish, in fact. Like the masks, for example, they say it is law to wear a mask. Oh, but not if you're exempt. And then there's this massive list of exemptions. So basically anyone could go around with a tag round their neck saying I'm exempt, and that's fine, which is crazy, because if there was this, I'm not denying that there isn't a virus, because obviously people do get ill and there are viruses the same as every other year. However, if it was some dangerous disease where people were scared that they couldn't, they have to wear a mask else they're going to die, I mean, it's just ridiculous, because else there would be no exemptions. It would be absolutely compulsory that you wear a mask or you could die, and very vulnerable people would have to just stay at home. It would be far too dangerous for them. But here they are out shopping and everything, and what's going on right now, it's very strange. Anyway, but yeah, getting back to what we wanted to speak about really was, I mean, where we are right now, I believe we've actually got a choice now. You either go along the path of trying to fight all the time, proving your point, trying to fight against laws, which are probably, you're just going to end up causing yourself stress to others. You're not going to feel happy. It's going to ruin your day. You maybe possibly your life. You're going to be living in fear, worrying about what's happening, worrying if you can go out of your house, worrying about this, worrying about that. You could go along that path if you want to. Most people, unfortunately, are going along that path because they're so frightened and terrified. and that, their human ego is wanting some comfort or reassurance or direction, whatever you want to call it. And so they bear that, they go along that path of, doing what they're told, being worried or fighting, the ego way, full of fear, fighting, all of that. So you can choose that path if you want to. And lots of people are going along that path because they feel safe. They feel that maybe there's some promises that are going to come at the end of it, You could go along in that way of thinking. Or there is actually another path that you could choose, and people don't realise. You could say, that's not my reality. I'm not living in that way. I choose not to. So you could choose a different path. You could choose to go inwards. You could choose to walk along the beach. You could choose to watch the waves crashing. You could choose to feel the sunshine on your face and soak up the vitamin D that's so necessary for our immune system. We could actually choose peace. We could choose to be relaxed, to go within. Because, whichever path you choose, there's no right or wrong. People are the way they are. They think in a certain way. They may not be the kind of person that can be, going within themselves or being mindful about their day or walking along the beach, because people are so much in fear, and that's just where they are right now. And for us or you or me or anybody, trying to wake people up to say, look, you don't have to do this. You could come with us, come on our path. You could be relaxed. You could have peace and contentment. You don't have to fight. It's not for us to keep pressuring people into doing, something one way or the other, because it may not be just their time. It may not be the path that they're supposed to be on. We are in this timeline, in the moment that we're in, and every single person has their own path, has their own journey, So,
Well,
I believe that we can choose which path we want to go on.
yeah, I think that's absolutely a very valid point that you're making. Well, it's not a valid point. It's spot on, obviously. Of course it is. Nevertheless, this is the thing. How much work does one have to do to actually make sure that that's the kind of mindset you're in when you're in that moment of potential confrontation or frustration or whatever, Because I sometimes, for example, feel in the mornings when I get up or whatever, and I leave the house to do whatever I do, because my life continues. I don't stop going out, and you don't either. We get on with our lives as best we can within the parameters set. And again, that's another thing that irks, doesn't it? Set. Whose right is it to set parameters for anybody anyway, right? But, when we think about that, it's very easy to then lose sight of that. And when you then are, even in a good mood, confronted, like I was in a good mood that day when I got on that bus, for example, it doesn't take much to flip that round and turn it into a real negative situation. Maybe my first mistake I made was taking it personally, perhaps, because I don't know that bus driver from Adam, right? It's funny because that would be the advice I'd be giving my friends or my daughter, for example. I'd be saying, well, yeah, don't take it personally. Do you know that person? No. Well, don't take it personally then. That's just their attitude. Let them act like that and don't give them your power, right? That's what I would be saying.
Exactly. They could be completely terrified and along the path of fear, and they might be completely terrified for their life and genuinely believe and worry that people aren't wearing masks, and for them that's reasonable to react that way. And for you, that's obviously completely not within what's, acceptable to you and your beliefs and your feelings. And so I think, again, it's just, a matter of training our minds in a way, retraining our pathways that in our brain, that we don't have to always feed the ego. We don't always have to go along that path, that we could, maybe take a step back and just think for a minute before we respond.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, I don't know about anybody else who will be listening to this at a late stage or yourself, Melissa, but before I board a bus, I'm almost half expecting that kind of conversation. You know, it hasn't happened very often. It's happened once or twice. In a year, considering what's going on, it's not too bad going. That I think that's the third time that a bus driver has ever mentioned anything about where is your mask or are you exempt or whatever. So in 12 months roughly, that's not bad going. I mean, it shouldn't be happening at all, of course, we know that, but bearing in mind what the situation is, that we have got no control over, of course, and I have to keep reminding myself of that as well. It's not bad going, but I do almost kind of semi expect that conversation. Even when I go into a supermarket, even like this evening, for example, I've been in this one supermarket 1,000 times before. I've never had an issue in there. But kind of every day you go in there, you're expecting maybe, just maybe, today's the first day that something might happen because who knows, something may have been announced on the television.
This is the thing, that's already feeding your fear, feeding your ego, feeding that path of, fight, if you like. And maybe it's a good idea, if you know that you're going to be going on a bus, if you know that you're going to be going into a shop, maybe just rehearse it a little bit and pre-plan and think in your mind the different scenarios which could happen. So, for instance, if you get on a bus, you know that they are going to say, "Where's your mask?" Your response then could be, "I'm exempt." That should be enough for you to continue on with your journey. However, if they say, "Why are you exempt? Do you have an exemption card?" All of those questions, I mean, you could just show your exemption card. If they continue to say, "What's your exemption?" We know, according to government, on the government website, it states you don't have to give that information. And it's also, a breach of, what is it a breach of? I've forgotten the word. It's discrimination anyway.
Yeah, I think
so
it was.
They're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think it's to do with the Equality Act, and there's something else.
That's
I think it was the Data Protection Act, which means you don't have to
Yeah.
explain your medical reasoning for being exempt or whatever.
That's right.
I mean that that is just following on from what happened in the bus, because that was the core sort of topic for me feeling bad afterwards, as you know, because we ended up meeting each other later on that day, and
Yeah.
and I kind of changed into a different person for a little while. We'll get back to that later. But anyway, so as I was...
Yeah, so we could just pre-plan. This is what I mean. I mean, we know roughly what the questions are going to be. We know what they're going to ask. We know what the score is. And we also know our law, our rights, what is correct, what is not allowed. We know the things to ask. We know the things to do. So rather than going there in fear with our egos, thinking they could be asking me this, what are they going to do? Worry, 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 fear, 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 feeding into that negativity, feeding into that low vibrational state, which is really not good. We could just go, right, I'm going to the shop, I'm going to the bus, I've got my exemption card. That's it. Let it go.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, the one day that I did feel that confident and thought, well, I've got my exemption card on me and everything else, was, funny enough, the last time there was an incident which also involved a bus. And that was the infamous coach trip going to London, where we were prepared and I was prepared, and yet it still didn't work. So it just goes to show, doesn't it? But I get
I think this is the whole fighting, choosing the battles that you fight, because at the end of the day, we are a tiny person in a massive world that at the end of the day have agendas to be rolled out, have rules to be in place, and they're going to be doing those things regardless of what we fight. And this is what we have to realise. If we fight, fight all the time, all we're doing is disrupting our inner peace and causing ourselves distress, worry, unhappiness. We are not at peace. We are completely living in terror, in fear, in low vibration. It reduces your immune system, and the police don't care, the government don't care. They have their rules, they have their backup, they have their, bigger picture to worry about.
Well,
they don't care about a coach of people or, you know, one or two people. They don't care. We're like ants compared to the bigger picture, you know.
Yeah. Well, I was going to just sorry for nearly interrupting there. I was just going to say, very facetiously and sarcastically almost, but I thought the government did care. Isn't that why they're doing all this? You know,
Well,
but that would be very naughty of me.
Aren't they? But...
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And this is, I think, is where this frustration comes from, where keeping yourself in check it becomes sometimes very challenging, because you kind of know that. Well, the frustration, amongst other things, comes from the fact that so many people have been had so easily, but then again, it's not for me to battle other people's battles for them, and it's not for me to, not necessarily that, but not for me to do other people's thinking for them, I guess. And also,
this is the thing. Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
Some people it's not their time to be awake, to be spiritually enlightened, to be at peace. I mean, some people are on a completely different life path. Some people are really old souls and they've lived a certain life path or certain life cycle in many different incarnations, and some people are very young souls. They haven't been through what we have, you know. It's not their time to awaken, it's not their path right now. And so we have to really be kind and not, you know, force people into trying to think a certain way, because they're not capable of thinking like we do, because they don't have the same spiritual awareness or spiritual growth or, you know, however you want to call it. That, you know, people aren't at the same stage, and that's not to say it's right or wrong. You know, it's not a bad or good thing. It's not anything like that at all. It's not wrong. It's just what stage they are in their life. And, you know, it's the same as fighting all the time or allowing it to not affect you. And I think for me, I know going forward that I've decided, you know, that's not my life. That's not where I am. That's not what I decide to be living in. That's, you know, you can choose. Is that the realistic world that I want to be living in? Is that how I want to live my world? Do I want to be frightened all the time? Do I want to be in stress and fear and worry all the time? No, I don't. So I'm not going to let it affect me anymore. I'm going to carry on with my life in peace. I'm going to say I'm exempt, thank you, goodbye. I'm not going to let it disturb my inner peace. And I think that's the choice that people, they have a path, you know, two paths to choose from. And I think that's just where we are, and fighting constantly is only going to disturb our own inner peace.
Well, you know, you and I both know that when we talk about these topics, because we speak a lot, then it gets quite emotionally charged, let's say, or passionate, I guess is one way of saying it, but passionate in terms of how we feel about it. Because when you actually start discussing it and talking about it, we realize how many layers there are to all of this as well, in terms of what's around us. And, you know, every time we start talking about it, we find ourselves talking in circles almost, because and also you just think you've just about sussed one part of it, and then suddenly the next thing crops up, the next thing that leads straight onto the next obstacle.
Layers like an onion.
Yeah, like that onion that we always talk about, right? And and it's quite fascinating, because you know, if this has been done by design, which I believe it has been, obviously, for me, obviously, and for you as well, then it's quite a master plan, isn't it? Because we're both not stupid, and I know a lot of people who aren't stupid, and you know, they have that sort of natural capability to think on their feet and have a good sort of lateral way of thinking about them, that have either fallen for it, and you know what we mean by those who have fallen for it, or are kind of smelling the coffee, as it were, but are still bogged down in that fighting sort of mode, let's say. That's not
this is the thing. It's not necessarily that people are, you know, stupid or not recognizing what's happening. I really think that it's not their time, they're not capable of realizing, because they're not on the path that we are. People are all on their different paths of life. They, you know, maybe are not supposed to spiritually awaken in this lifetime for them, you know.
Yeah.
And what might be very clearly obvious to us isn't clear at all to other people, because they're not on the same spiritual growth path as us.
Well,
so for instance, you know, spiritually, the materialistic world that's full of you know, money, jobs, ego, fear, that's all called the 3D world, the three-dimensional world. When you go to 4D, four-dimensional, that's where people are starting to awaken. You know, they're starting to heal. They're going through the processes of healing, of maybe working on, you know, gratitude, positive affirmations. They're working through being, you know, working through their healing process. And then this is where some people find themselves stuck, where they don't quite know what to do, whether they want to slip back into the old 3D way of thinking, into fear and ego and money mindset, you know, all of the negativity. Or some people decide that they want to ascend higher and progress spiritually, and that's then called 5D, five-dimensional. And that's where we are in complete peace. We are completely grateful for everything. We are mindful, and we do not allow, or, you know, we don't allow any of the 3D world, so ego, fear, money, none of that can bother us anymore, because we have passed the 4D stage and we are happily sitting in five-dimensional, which is in complete peace, love and harmony. And for me, I know personally that that's where I am now, and that's where I want to be. I don't want to keep going back into the 3D world, because it causes pain and suffering. And for me, in this lifetime, for me personally, I know that I'm spiritually progressing, and that I don't want to be within that lower vibration, because it causes pain and suffering, and it's not nice to be in. And I don't want that to be my reality. And so I've decided, you know, that I want to be within peace. I want to be within my heart. I want to spiritually grow. I mean, I'm a Reiki master as well, so I heal people, and that's, you know, that's what I do. That's my purpose in life, to help and heal people. But that's where I am, and a lot of people don't realize they have that choice. A lot of people are sucked into the mainstream media, into that fear-based 3D world, and this is the problem. And so I've been trying to show lots of people that there is another choice, there is another way.
Yeah, that's very enlightening and fascinating stuff, actually. And, you know, the 3D, 4D, 5D, the transformation, as it were, that goes for everybody. That's not dependent on what side of any fence anybody's stood, or whatever opinion anybody has on anything that's going on. You know, we're talking about this topic in conjunction now with...
I mean, it's not religious either.
No.
For people that think,
Right.
oh, it's a religion, no. Spirituality is not a religion at all. And it is, in fact, you know, people talk about mind, body and soul. Every single person on this planet has a mind, a body and a soul. And so spirituality is to do with your soul. It's to do with incorporating all of those three aspects. It's no kind of religion. It's what we are.
Right, exactly.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's absolutely fine. And I think this is what we've been talking about for a little while now, and it was something that I spoke about a little bit. For me, it was relatively new. I mean, I've had experiences with certain types of awakenings, let's say. I'll use that term very loosely. But being mindful of everybody having that what you just alluded to now, can be sometimes challenging to remind yourself about, right? Because if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're alone and it's easy to sort of forget. I think a lot of it is down to the things like the distractions, the daily distractions that we have, that you would call the 3D, or that's called the 3D. The jobs, the money, the everyday stuff that kind of keeps the world ticking, as it were, the world that we experience on a daily basis. I think that's why, for example, I'll just use an example here, the idea of, I won't say going off grid, but let's say living an alternative form of life, in terms of not being tied to some sort of monetary system, for example, seems utopian to a lot of people, because first of all, where to begin with that concept, as it were, right? So that's one thing that we've also touched on, and we have friends who are actually really looking at that option beyond the planning phase already, really, if you like.
Yeah.
It's gone beyond
just quickly tapping into that, sorry,
Yeah,
very quickly.
please do.
Just tapping into what you were saying there as well, is that, surely a lot of people must realise by now that this 3D world that people are living in, where material things matter more than anything else, surely they must realise by now that these are not the things that we're missing. We're not missing money, we're not missing our jobs, we're not missing the fancy cars, the fancy meals in the restaurants. What we're missing is compassion. What we're missing is our families. What we're missing is love and touch and hugging and smiling. Those are the most important things that raise our vibrations. And also, a lot of people may know, but we have this thing called an aura around us. And our heart and our aura is in 6 feet around us. And if you think about that, we're not allowed to go within 6 feet of people, right?
Yeah.
And that in itself is really hard and makes people feel like they're suffering, because they're not having that interconnection with people. They're not feeling that positive vibration. They're not getting that happy hormone. They're not feeling that love and compassion. And that's most of the problem. And that's what really, if we think about it and speak honestly to each other, that's what people are missing: love and people and compassion, not the materialistic things of the world that don't matter.
Right. And then when you throw in the mix things like substance use, which of course has been promoted in many ways for decades. I mean, we can go back in history a little bit and talk about all sorts of things that have happened in the past, but we won't do that now because this is not a history lecture. But society in general, things like alcohol, for example, is accepted in society both as something that can be pleasurable, and I'll use that with a small p, but also something that is accepted as a problem with a very, very large P. And of course, those sorts of things feed into people's numbness and detachment to where we really should be, right? And getting back to what you were just saying there as well about the aura. Now, again, if that's part of the master plan, then it just goes to show you that whoever it is that's perpetrating all of this, that the knowledge around all of this, how complex and how concise and how overreaching this rollout is in every way, shape, or form. I mean, they've, again, it's something that's been mentioned in the past. All bases have been covered. Not only are you making people sort of hide their identities almost by getting them to wear face coverings, which is a form of submission, right? And it's a form of imprisonment in itself, certainly visually. Never mind the fact that it's got health consequences, but also the fact that what you were just pointing out there about keeping people at a distance from each other, whether they wear one or not, which is the irony of it all.
It goes a lot deeper than that.
Of course.
For years and years, if you think about fluoride, they've been putting it in the water, they've been putting it in toothpaste. Dentists are almost, they promote it if your teeth are a little bit, if they have cavities quite a lot, they prescribe fluoride toothpaste. And that actually calcifies the pineal gland, which is just below your third eye. And this is all to do with your spiritualness, all to do with your spiritual being. It's how we connect to source, how we connect to spirit, how we connect to God or love, or however you want to call it. And they are blocking that. They're trying to stop us connecting to God, connecting to source, connecting to love. And
Right.
this is the thing.
Right. And that spiritual connection that you're talking about there that is being interfered with on a massive scale. I mean, we could talk about, for example, we won't necessarily, but, for example, how the PCR tests are even carried out, what part of the body they are infiltrating with that procedure is very, very telling. And I'm not too sure why people aren't catching on to that more and more. Why would you go in that region of someone's head to get any
Exactly. I mean, my child's been in and out of hospital for years and years now, and every time, we've had to have tests for viruses or bacteria or anything at all, they've never ever in all of these years had to go in the nose only for a feeding tube. It's always been in the throat because it's connected. There's no real reason that I know of or that I'm aware of that should even be happening.
Right. And that surely that in itself is telling, right? Again, it was a conversation that was had a little while back, and we were starting to theorize a little bit about, well, what are they doing up there? Then why is that? Never mind what they might be inserting up there, but why go there in the first place? Why go to that part of the body? Because I'll be honest with you, when I think about the procedure of that test, it makes me quiver. It's something I don't like thinking about. Actually, it feels uncomfortable straight away when I think about it. And more so than getting a jab. Not saying I would ever get jabbed. The point I'm making is in terms of actual medical procedures, a needle in an arm doesn't worry me as much as something going up my nose. It just feels...
You just touched on something really very important there. What you just said was something like, it makes me feel uncomfortable, it doesn't sit well with me. And this is the thing. If in people's gut, in their gut instinct, if they genuinely believe something feels wrong, if they have a slight inkling that something isn't right, then don't do it. And it's that simple. There's no, oh, but this law might be happening, they might make me. No. If something doesn't sit right with you, no, you don't do it. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
There's no worrying. There's no dreaming up. This might happen. That might happen. Don't feed into the fear. Literally, there is a one-word sentence. No.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And that is that is just astounding, really, that people are so, like we said, basically so detached from their own personal instincts, their own intuition, their own inner self, or however we want to call it, that that the external information that they're getting through media, through campaigns that have been pushed. I mean, as well as I do, both living here in this region, this area has been hit particularly bad in terms of media campaign and all sorts of other things for reasons we won't go into right now. But when you look at that, it just goes to show the effects that connection people seem to have with the external stuff seems to override and supersede what they should be doing, which is connecting with their own feelings and instincts that you're talking about, and what I was mentioning there, in terms of it makes me quiver when I think of anybody going anywhere near my nasal cavity with anything.
But this is the thing, people have become so much in fear and anxiety that they're just hoping for a glimmer of hope and to be told what to do, to give them, they want to be given the direction, the gold at the end of the rainbow, whatever you want to call it. They just will blindly follow what they're told because they don't know what to do. They are in fear. And this is the problem that we have. If you only took a step back and practice mindfulness every day, living in the present moment, actually connecting with your five senses, checking how you feel, what's actually happening, people need to be more going inwards, focusing on what's happening to themselves with their feelings, what's happening with their instincts, what feels right, what sits right with you.
I mean, it's a topic, actually, I'm just thinking about. I mean, we've just talked now for 45 minutes, and I feel we've only just touched on the subject really, because I'm very tempted to even looking at other things. For example, where does this come from? How come society on this grand scale is so easily swayed? And I mean, we've been looking at all sorts of reasons. We've been sitting there thinking about it. I've spoken to friends about it. You have as well. About we've spoken with each other about it at length. What is the issue here? Is the issue what's going on at home? Because the parents aren't bothered because they're so distracted and so they don't have time for their kids. Is the issue the schooling system? Is the issue the nourishment that's being taken on board by kids? I mean, is that where it's starting? Does it start at birth? Or where does it start? All of this?
I think most of the problem is that people are literally just living in fear for their life because the media are pumping people full of fear, full of unnecessary fear. I mean, we know that, because we've done a lot of research, we're not just people who are uneducated. We are very educated. I did law, I've worked in solicitors, I've studied only basic microbiology, but I've been doing lots of research into all of this.
Yeah.
Not only, I'm also a mindfulness coach, a Reiki master. I know the spiritual side as well. And I'm trying to combine them both to get a bigger understanding and a bigger picture of where all the different kinds of people are, what they're feeling, what they're thinking from all the different kinds of aspects and why. And most of the people are blindly trusting the government and the NHS because they feel like they're safe. They feel like they're being looked after. They don't have to think for themselves. They feel like they are, looked after, that they don't have to worry. They are so scared to even look into anything because they turn on the news.
Yeah.
This many deaths, this many deaths, this many deaths. We know that they are artificially inflated. We know on the government website it states, for anybody that dies or within, I think it's 28 days of a positive test on their death certificate, even if they got hit by a bus or had a heart attack, as long as they had a positive test within 28 days, it goes down as a coronavirus death, as COVID.
Yeah.
And we know that it's all artificially inflated, like hospital admissions. We know that admissions on the NHS website states that you could go for a blood test, you could go and get weighed, you could go and say hi and be checked in for blood pressure. That's classed as an admission. But on the telly, on the radio, on these, scaremongering media, it's just all ridiculously inflated, and it's causing so much fear. It's fear, 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 fear. And people can't cope with that, so they blindly just trust who they think they can trust, the government, the NHS.
Yeah.
When really, they should switch off the television because it's all propaganda.
Yeah.
If we just switch off the television, switch off the radio, maybe turn on some meditation music, turn on some classical music, Disney music, whatever you like, and start, having more positive vibrations, more positive frequencies, switch from fear to peace. We need to start making that decision on which side we want to be living in. What is your reality? Is your reality constantly going to be in fear? Or are you going to take a step back and learn to live in peace, which is going to be your reality, And I keep saying that, but it's true.
Well, yeah. No, and please do keep saying it, because I think that's a point that needs to be emphasized. The more that positive message is spoken about, then the better it is, really. But you're touching on the fear thing there, and people's, what I would call, sort of almost religious dependency on media and on their televisions, their phones, whatever it is, that the gadgets that they might use, But again, another thing that I really, really find difficult to grasp is that, and I used this analogy a while back, which is that if you had someone in your family that lies to you so compulsively, as those who you see in your TV screens, you would have banished them from your family years ago. And yet you still have people who will cherry pick the information that they're given on the media by so-called politicians, so-called people in charge. We know they're not in charge. They're mouthpieces. They have their scripts written for them. They have spin doctors, as we call them here in the UK. They are handled, right? People have to understand that. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that how is it that people then go back to those very people for their solace and their security, their feeling of security or whatever, and advice,
because they
knowing
think they're going to have hope.
but yet they're going back to the very people who have lied time and time and time again, and will continue to do so because that's what they do. That's their jobs. Now, anybody with and I nearly went a little bit into cynical mode again because I tend to do that. Maybe I should work on that. But anybody, I'll say it anyway, anybody with half a brain, I'm not even expecting them to have a whole brain, just half of one would do, surely would understand that that might not be the best way forward. And that's sort of something that baffles the heck out of me. You know?
I mean, the problem is the government are dangling a carrot constantly all the time, aren't they? You know, if you be good boys and girls, we might let you out for the weekend. We might let you go to school. We might let you go to the supermarket longer. I don't know. I'm being, you know, I don't know what examples to give, but you get the drift.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. They're constantly dangling this carrot, this false hope, these promises, but they word it in the kind of way that it might happen. We're thinking about this. It's possible that this may happen.
Yeah.
They're constantly dangling the carrot of promises to people, and so they're constantly surrendering to them because they have a glimmer of hope. They think that everything's going to be okay if they just do what they're told. But you know, for me, I know that I can't keep chasing that false promise. You know, that be in fear all the time. I don't want that to be my reality, and it's not going to be. I'm not going to be chasing a dangling carrot in fear of my life. I'm going to enjoy my life and be mindful and breathe in the sea air and go within myself and be peaceful and not be in that reality. That is not my reality, and I won't be chasing carrots.
Yeah, we don't want to be chasing carrots, and I mean, and those carrots work. Those carrots work in both ways, right? So you've got the dangling of carrots in terms of if you do this, you get a little pat on the head and a sugar lump, those sorts of carrots, right? But then you've also got the carrot of fear, which is if you don't do this, this is what will happen, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, you know, you and I often find ourselves putting our minds at ease, each other's minds at ease, because we sometimes start, you know, we talk about things and it's things like, for example, well, they said if you don't do this, this is going to happen, or, you know, they're going to force you to do this, they're going to force you to do that, when in actual fact, when we take closer look at certain things, it's not actually necessarily the case. Not that we should be thankful for that, because none of this should be happening anyway, but you know,
this is the thing. Anyone can get wrapped up in fear and completely go off the path that they're
absolutely
on. And this is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be so careful of that and so mindful and really, really think about that, because it is so easy for anyone to slip into that fear.
Yeah.
And the problem is, fear is a low vibration, a low frequency, and that will just grow and grow and grow if you allow it to do so. And you know, soon enough you'll find yourself with anxiety and depression because you'll be clinging to their every word, worrying what's going to happen next.
Well, this is it.
And
Go on. Sorry, I interrupted you this time.
Sorry, I always interrupt you normally.
No.
But we just have to literally take ourselves out of that and think, do I really want to be living a life in fear? Do I really want to be hanging on every word that Boris Johnson says on the telly? Do I want to be permanently in fear constantly all the time, worrying about what's going to happen next? Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? What's going to happen? They can't do this. They can't do that. We must fight. We can't do that. I can't do that, and I won't.
No.
And, you know, people get dragged along in it, in fear, anxiety, depression. You know, some people go into fight, flight, freeze response, amygdala. So there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, and it fires if you feel like you're in danger. So for instance, if you're crossing the road, you know that feeling you get where, oh, I need to step back, a car could run me over. That's the part of your brain called the amygdala that does that. It controls the fight, flight, and freeze response. And so that's constantly getting fired, because you feel like your life's in danger. You feel like you are in fear, because they're telling you, if you don't do this, you're putting people's life at risk. You could die. There's people dying everywhere. Die, COVID, constantly. And so your amygdala, the part of the brain, is constantly firing off all the time. And, you know, it's really quite worrying, actually, that we allow that to happen. And I say we allow it to happen because we do have a choice. We could say, I'm not allowing that to happen anymore. And we take ourselves out of it, and we start retraining our brain pathways to feeling happy feelings, to feeling good feelings, to take ourselves out of the fight, flight, and freeze response, so that our amygdala is not constantly firing, constantly putting us in that fear, you know?
And I think a good place to start would be, for example, not doing too much television watching and that sort of thing.
Definitely.
Now, you know, getting back to the idea of being spiritually equipped so as not to find yourself in that pickle that gets one angry, let's say, right? Which is what happened to me a few days ago, where thankfully I had you on the phone, because had I not, I probably would have been ripping tree trunks out the side of the street that I was walking on, you know, because I felt so wrongly done by. It was ridiculous. But you know, I guess my way forward personally here, and I've been giving it a lot of thought over the last few days, it, you know, is getting that balance right somehow, to not let the negative stuff in terms of, for example, getting any, you know, involving myself in any disputes online, for example. That's a big one for me personally, because I mean,
it's very triggering, isn't it?
Well, it's very triggering.
It's a problem for most people that I know, and it's hard not to get sucked into that.
It is hard to get sucked, you know, to not get sucked into that, and if you look at it rationally, it doesn't get you anywhere at all, because you're not even talking to anybody really. You are, but you're not. You know, you're not in an actual physical, you know, aura-esque kind of situation. You're online. You don't know who you're talking to for a kickoff. But then,
not only that, but people are actually paid to be on there to cause arguments.
Of course, they are.
They have that exact job.
Yeah.
And not only are we concerned about that we are in fear, fear actually reduces the immune system, which makes you sick. And so by living in constant fear, and also the fact that we are living inside most of the time, you know, we're reducing our immune system with fear.
Yeah.
We're reducing our immune system by not getting enough vitamin D from the sunshine. And so we're automatically very vulnerable to more viruses because of those things. And also wearing a mask for long periods of time, it actually traps bacteria and fungus inside the mask, which we're breathing into our lungs, causing pneumonia and pleurisy and bacterial infections, which is half the problem. People think they have COVID, which is a virus, and this is why they're going on ventilators, which don't work, because in actual fact they've most probably got pleurisy or a bacterial infection from the masks, in which case they need antibiotics to treat the infection. And this is a massive problem. You know, we need to be this is one thing that I've noticed. The government, the NHS, the media, nobody, which I find really strange, nobody has said viruses are fought by our immune system. You need to be healthy, you need to exercise, you need sunshine, you need to boost your immune system, have multivitamins, keep healthy. Nobody has told us that. which I find incredible.
Yeah, well, we know the reasons why, and in fact, we know the reasons why they tell us to do the total opposite. And that then leads you to the obvious conclusion that there, of course, is some sort of agenda going down here for which a virus is used as a smokescreen for something much, much bigger, is my personal opinion. But also another thing, of course, with isolating...
Well, it's not even your personal opinion, it's an
Yeah.
agenda that's a fact. It's all over
Yeah.
the website, it's all over the government website.
Yeah.
It's there in black and white.
Yeah, sure. I just didn't want to talk for other people. That's all, because I've learned not to do that. And that's I've got egg on my face in the past for talking on behalf of my fellow humans, meaning well. And of course, I've been promptly put into place, and saying I can talk for myself. Thank you very much. How dare you open the supermarket door for me, young man? I'm capable of doing that myself. Chivalry and all that is out the window. But another thing, of course, that you're forced to, well, not forced necessarily, well, you are, to do when you are isolating and not going out and you're at home, is you will then turn to online activities. You will go multimedia, and that's exactly where they want you. Well, it is choice.
Is a choice.
Well, it is a choice, but it becomes less and less of a choice if you get into those habits of communicating with your friends online all the time, rather than picking up a phone and using that and talking in a phone, which is originally. Now, I'm gonna come up with a revelation here on this podcast that maybe those listening in might find not only shocking but quite astounding. And that is, did you know, Melissa, that your smartphone originally was actually based on a gadget called a telephone? And actually, what you can do with it is you can actually hold it to your ear, you dial a number, and you just talk to somebody on it. It's amazing stuff. It's quite funny. And I'm being facetious like that because a lot of people are using it for everything but. And it's quite astounding, really, because if you've been everyone's been led there. That's why I was just going to finish off that point by saying everybody's been led there. I was mentioning this on a conversation I had with 3 friends on a program that got put out today, actually part 2 of it. I'm not here to plug other shows, but I'm just saying as a reference point. And and I was making that point of, when did that whole push for smartphones suddenly happen? Because I remember when the old mobiles came out, or the cellulars, as our American cousins would call them. But it went from the old Nokias, the size of board rubbers, down to smaller sort of normal mobile phone kind of things. Then Blackberries came out and all that sort of stuff. Blackberries was a sort of,
this is the thing. It's
and then
slow, because it's such a slow progression. Nobody even notices it.
No.
To be happening.
But
it's like I remember being little, having channels 1, 2, 3, 4,
yeah.
And as a teenager, having a Sony Walkman tape player and a calculator and
absolutely
a diary. And now suddenly all of these things are in the palm of our hand. It's a computer, it's a tracking system, it's a blood pressure monitor, it's a calculator, a diary, internet, everything is in the palm of our hand. And, all of that has happened so quickly. And I'm quite sure that if I ask my dad what it was like when he was little, if my granddad was alive, what it would be like when he was little, everything happened so quickly and at a phenomenal rate.
Well, this is getting back to the point that we were making earlier and touching on earlier, which is that people are so distracted that they go with it without noticing, right? And so things like microwave ovens, when did they all come into play? And I do remember that my mum and dad, they, just like the video recorder when that first came out, I remember they stalled on it for a while. We weren't one of those families that rushed out and got the newest gadget as soon as it came out in the market. A lot of our friends and whatever, not relatives necessarily, but a lot of our friends and neighbours did, because it was one-upmanship on each other kind of thing. It's a bit like kids going to school with the newest trainers. Keeping up with the Joneses, and if possible, outbidding the Joneses even, or being a step ahead, whatever. But all that sort of stuff. And, and when you think about the progression from your Sony Walkman to what we have now, it is quite a leap. And I'm only 47, so I'm sort of half a century old, getting there. So, 48 actually, in a month and a half. But since I was a teenager, where internet was just no such thing, certainly not in the civil world. I mean, I'm sure the military were using internet type systems dating back probably pre-World War II, I would imagine. Maybe even older than that. So, because they're always decades ahead of us anyway when it comes to things like that. We both know that on good authority. because we both have, connections, be they direct or indirectly, with military or people who have been involved with the military at some stage in their lives. But and I don't believe I'm disclosing too much there by saying that, but it's it's our country. We know as Brits, that Britain has always prided itself on its military, let's say, and so everybody knows someone who's been in the army or the navy or the air force or something like that. So it's a hard secret to keep. That they're testing new equipment here and whatever. I mean, the part of the world where we live is only an hour away or something from a place called Salisbury Plain. And there's all sorts of military activity up there, and they test the latest weaponry and all sorts of stuff. So word gets out quite quickly, really.
Yeah, I think bringing it back to what we were speaking about originally anyway, because I'm going to have to get off in a minute, unfortunately.
Please do.
But,
No, I didn't mean please do get off in a minute. I meant, please do revert back to what you were going to say.
But yeah, basically all I was going to bring it back to was literally saying that we do have a choice. You don't need to be living in fear all of your life and suffering from such bad anxiety and depression and fear. You can take a step back from that, and feel free to contact myself or Sven, or can put you in touch with me. However, I can help you with mindfulness activities to help you be more focused on the moment, to not be with your mind racing in the past, racing in the future, worrying about what's going to happen, but to live a peaceful life and to not worry so much.
I think that's a very good and positive note to end it on. I think you'd agree on that.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, that's it really. I mean, people have a choice, and we need to start focusing inwards and living more in peace, because like I said, people aren't missing the fancy cars, the fancy restaurants, the big paychecks. People miss people, our families, having a cuddle, kissing them on the cheek, being within their aura, feeling that positivity, that love. And that's what's the most important thing.
Yes. So 5D it is then. So it would be my suggestion to everybody, and it's something I shall be working on. And I can say I'm very grateful to have the contact with you, that we can. We do sort of discuss it quite often. It's something that does me very well, because I need to be not only reminded, but I need to be shown that as well a little bit, because you do then get bogged down very quickly if you're not careful. And
it's very easy to go off the path
very much so
you're supposed to be on, and that's why it can't just be one of those things that you learn once and that's it. You have to do these things every single day.
Yeah,
it's a life change. It's not a quick fix. It's a life change.
Yes.
It's the way. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? You don't just learn it once and then that's the end of it.
This is it. People are hoping for some snap of the fingers, for a magic wand, for a quick fix, and it doesn't work like that.
Well, that's
real peace, believe it or not, requires commitment and time and energy into yourself, into your heart, into your soul, into being mindful, into taking yourself out of that three-dimensional world of materialistic fear, money, all of that. It requires, it is a lifestyle, a change of how we live, and we have to practice it every single day. When I wake up, the routine that, I myself sometimes slip off the path, and I have to get myself motivated and back on track sometimes. It's natural for everybody to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mornings, it's good to wake up and first of all make your bed, because that's a very important thing. I think they even teach that in the army, that it's very important to do that. It helps your mind. It makes it clear. And then to do a gratitude diary of 10 things. So it could be things as simple as, I'm so grateful that I have water. I'm grateful that I have food. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful that I have, fresh air that I can breathe. All of these things are very important, because once you start being grateful for everything you have, you don't worry about everything else, because you're happy and content within what you have. And lots of these different things every day help being grateful, positive affirmations. I am strong. I am brave. I am resilient. You know, today is going to be a good day. If we do these positive things every single day, it becomes second nature. If you practice these things every single day, it just is so beneficial to your mental health, to your soul, to your life, and to those around you, to how you react with other people, how you interact with people.
Absolutely. Well, on that very, very positive note, absolutely beautifully put, I would like to just express my thanks and gratitude as we're on that topic. And I mean that sincerely, to Melissa for joining me on my first attempt at doing an audio, a podcast, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully Melissa and I will be doing a few of these, he says tentatively, as Melissa starts chucking pots and pans at the phone for me saying that.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's really nice to discuss, because you know, so many people don't realise that we do have a choice and that there is another way.
Yes, there's always another way.
you.
Yeah, there is always another way, and it's just good to know what ways there are. And you know, unlearning some stuff is important, but of course, realizing that you do have a choice and you can make your own choice in life, which is something I've said for a while, but not in this sense, the way you've put it, which I think has been, very revealing and something to ponder on, most definitely. So again, many thanks to Melissa for coming on this evening. I know she leads a rather busy life, so I'm very grateful to you for squeezing me in.
If anybody does need any extra help or guidance or anything at all, then by all means contact Sven and he'll put you in touch with me. I'm always available to help people that need it and that want it. So that's, I'm always here.
Yes, thank you for that. And what I'll do is I'm not too sure where I'm going to be putting this podcast just yet. It will probably go on my YouTube channel as well, but I'll certainly those who know how to contact me will know how to contact me, but I'll also make a bit more of a point of it, how I can be contactable. I'll even maybe drop in an email address or something like that if required, and then we can sort something out, most definitely.
Or if there's a comment section even,
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so thank you, Melissa, for that. And to everybody who will be listening to this at some point, I hope you all had a good weekend, and I hope you will start your week well and serenely. And until the next time, Melissa, thank you, and a good night to you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.